This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And today I'm going to be introducing you to two people who you probably have seen before on Avoid the Maze. But before I do that, I found this quote, and I think it sort of is going to sum up what we're going to talk about today. It says, "We all have battles to fight, and it's often in those battles that we are the most alive. It's on the front lines of our lives that we earn wisdom, create joy, forge friendships, discover happiness, find love, and do purposeful work." And I have to tell you, when I met the two of you, I forged a friendship that you can't get rid of me. I'm like a fly stuck on your fly paper. So today I have both Darci Steiner and Cynthia with us. And both of these women, if you're looking on Zoom right now, they look healthy, delightful, excited, engaged. And I think they are right now. But when you hear their stories, I think you're going to find out that do not judge a book by its cover. So I'm going to start with you, Darci, because we recently met. I've had you on here a couple of times, and with your loving husband as well.
Yep.
Just catch us up to what is going on and what it is that you have to face each day.
Well, so I am disabled, unable to walk very much. Doctors don't really know for sure what's going on, why I haven't been able to walk after a chair hit my ankle at my daughter's wedding. But the best thing they can come up with is CRPS, which is complex regional pain syndrome. And what that is it's a severe nerve pain disorder that continuously fires pain signals to the brain. And it's excruciating. It's constant. So, it should have been a sprained ankle that lasted 6 weeks or so, a normal sprained ankle, but it's been 3.5 years since that injury. And I'm just now starting to be able to walk more around the house, which is pretty cool because I'm actually planning a get together tonight to make cookies. And this is the first time that I've been able to do that. The house isn't that clean, but I mean, Mark cleaned it. Mark tried, it's funny, Mark tried to make the centerpiece for tonight's gathering. And I'm like, good caregiver, but not a good centerpiece maker.
Love it. And this is your second
Yes.
time going through something very similar, where you've been bedridden for a while and then wheelchair bound. Do you ever get upset and look up at the heavens and say, why me?
I did. I don't so much anymore. You kind of get to a place like Paul, where he stopped asking why. And it's not that you don't want things to get better, but you start asking different questions. Like, what I've tried to do is turn outward and ask who can benefit from my story. And, you ask different questions than why. And so that's where I'm at right now, is who, and we're just going with that for now. And I have what you said at the beginning, your quote at the beginning was beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
And when you said new friendships, I have more friends now than I've ever had, and it's because this has made me want to gather women, because I'm finding a lot of lonely women. I'm just meeting them. And so I'm like, let's connect. Let's connect together. So we're making cookies and then we're going to do other things and, and have a women's group where we're connected. But it's true. Good things are coming from this tragic time.
That is a beautiful way to look at life. And we also have Cynthia with us. And Cynthia, you know, David Zimmerman was kind enough to connect me with you. God, it's almost been a year. And I remember when we did the first podcast, even though I had read your website, David and I had talked, I just sat there and was like, I mean, how can you be smiling and giving your story when everything is so painful?
I get asked that question all the time, and I guess what's the other choice? I mean, walk around with a scowl. I like to, I don't know. I think I'm kind of have a pleasant nature naturally, and I just like to welcome people with joy. And I don't know. I'm also very real, But yeah, I get asked it all the time, and I don't really know the answer. I didn't know, Darci, that you have CRPS. It certainly sounds like you do. I was a singer, dancer, actor when I was all my life, and then at 21, a ballet injury triggered CRPS. But
Wow.
I was just told that I was crazy by my doctors for the first 13 and a half years, and that's such a horrible thing to go through. It's so abusive. We call it medically induced trauma. The doctors can hurt us so much, and I lost. I mean, my family walked away, my friends left. I lost my career. We couldn't have children because a doctor did a procedure that never should have been done. Yeah, it's just so much tragedy. And then the suffering, and I got to the point of so much depression and anxiety, and I just loss of hope. And I started really thinking about suicide, pretty much every day. And I mean, this is all 39 years ago when I got sick, and I'm still sick now. I have I think I have 19 overlapping conditions or comorbidities, as they say. And then I got triple negative breast cancer, the most aggressive form of breast cancer. I really got it in probably 2017, but I didn't tell the doctors about it until 2019 and went through that. That was a whole huge struggle, doing it my way, and I survived my way. And but so life has, life has been very difficult, but but at the same time, it's filled. My nonprofit to help other women with high impact pain is called For Grace, and it's for the grace in our life. And I love the quote, "The strongest souls are forged by the hottest fires." I just think that it's really hardship that teaches us to be truly caring for other people, really have compassion like we never could have had if not for great tragedy. There is a way to find grace through tragedy. And you were talking about battles. And I wrote, my first book was Battle for Grace. It was all about the battles and surviving them. And now I've learned that, and I wonder how you will think about this, Darci, but I've learned that high impact pain comes from trauma. And trauma is not a piece of the puzzle, it's the puzzle. And that's what we're doing now. And I'm looking at generational trauma on, oh my gosh, my mother's side and my father's side. He committed suicide when I was very, very young. And yeah, and it's just now my mom has advanced Alzheimer's, and we're dealing with that, taking care of her. But I feel like coming back into the family now, like it's a safe place, because I can see my siblings as we're all trauma survivors, even though I don't talk with them about it, not yet anyway. I see that we're all surviving trauma in our own way. And we all have a piece of, we all play a certain part in the family. I'm doing something called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing for trauma release. It's phenomenal.
Yep, same.
There you go. So we've all dealt with it, but a lot of women with high impact pain can't look at that yet. There's stigma and shame around it, which is so sad, because I mean, we need to remove ourselves from the victim role. So that's just something that I'm really excited about. I just had about an hour and a half conversation with a New York Times writer, and she's a doctor, and she works in the New York Times Magazine. So I'm just excited about getting that and writing another book about, trauma and going through the cancer, and just there's so much. It just goes on and on. You can always help people. So that's
Well,
exciting.
And
Meaningful.
what I find interesting, that when a man goes to a doctor and says, "Doc, my finger hurts," the doctor looks at the finger, examines it, figures out what's wrong with it, treats it, man goes home. A female walks into the doctor's office, says, "Doctor, my finger hurts. Stop using it. Go rest." It's like, wait a second. My pain is just as real as his. Why are we why are we treated that way? And it's only recently that I have found doctors that now are starting to listen. But they are few and far between. And it seems like when I've listened to your stories, both of you, that was sort of what it was like too.
Mm.
Darci, it sounded like when you had your first incident, it was like, okay, yeah, go home, get into bed, and when you recover, you'll be okay. I mean, that's not a good answer for any of us, right?
Oh, and it's so frustrating and it's so depressing when you go home from those visits from the doctor, because you have your hopes set on maybe we'll find something out today. And then I just go home deflated and crying. And so, yeah, I've learned to become an advocate and demand, no, I made an appointment. I need you to listen to me. And this and this and this is what's going on. And we have to advocate for ourselves and say, listen, I need you to hear me. And I had a podiatrist, and she was a woman. So it's not just male doctors, it's women doctors too. And she said, you need to stay off that foot. You need to wear this boot. And, and she wasn't listening to me. And I said, boots have hurt me in the past. And I ended up wearing the boot, and I got hurt even more, and she just could not help me. And I had another gentleman, doctor, who would not even look at my foot. He looked at my MRI and he said, I can't help you. And I said, but you haven't even looked at my foot. And he said, I can't help you. And I said, but you haven't even looked at my foot. Like, I have a whole host of questions. And he refused. I paid my copayment. I don't know why. I shouldn't have. But yeah, you go home from those appointments and you're like, nobody believes me. This is not in my head. Why would I have two little kids, 20 years ago, my first incident, I have two little kids. Why would I choose to be bedridden? Like, I want to be a mom.
Right.
I'm not choosing this. This is real. And so you have to learn to advocate for yourself. So I stopped going to doctors and I started learning myself from textbooks. And I got my degree in nutrition. And that's what made me better.
Cynthia,
That's very cool.
yeah.
So I remember those days. For me, they were so long ago when I would go to the doctor, and I was in a wheelchair. I still use a wheelchair, but I can
Me
swim a
too.
lot. And I would say it's so important to keep moving, but I remember the doctors would say, just horrible things like what you're talking about, Darci. I would hear things like, when my arm went into a severe contracture, you're folding your arm up with your mind, just the way one levitates oneself. You have tendonitis from Mars. God, they diagnosed me with so many crazy things. You have stage fright. I remember that one.
Wow.
That's what I lived for. You should give up this foolish notion of dancing and be what you should be, a housewife and a mother. And I finally thought, well, how does a person who's bedridden, I was bedridden for 10 years. How does that person be a housewife and a mother? How is it possible? It seems so crazy. I remember one doctor, this is so long ago now, but he said something like, he said some crazy thing to me. And I remember he said, I went to medical school And I learned everything about the human body there. And that frightened me. I mean, because I asked him, how do you know I'm crazy? You know, I mean, one doctor said to me, you're only a woman anyway. It doesn't really matter. Why don't you shoot yourself in the head? And that's what I stopped going. Then I finally went to integrative. I switched over to integrative medicine. And that's actually when I started getting better, because these doctors, they understand pain. They're never going to say it's in your head. They can help you. They don't believe in invasive procedures, which they're not right for me. And I've been really bullied by the medical community to get, 2 spinal cord implants, an intrathecal pump. I literally had a doctor who used to call me, yell at me, you're not doing it right, you have to do all this. And my pain would shoot through the roof. He'd hang up on me. And finally, my partner, John, said, you're not going to him anymore. And I realized that this doctor is making me really, really sick. And I mean, there's so much misogyny in the medical system, and as you mentioned, Darci, women who hate women, it's implicit, explicit bias. They don't even understand that so many doctors just assume that because you're a doctor, because you're a woman, and you have pain, that you're not maybe being hormonal, or it's not all in your head, or maybe you don't need maybe a psychiatric referral. They don't even understand that they're doing that. They don't realize that they're treating women differently than men. I mean, just started using mice, for research, female mice. Yeah, there's a great book called Doing Harm. I interviewed the writer, and it's an incredible book all about the history of gender bias in healthcare. And I was interviewed for the book, and then I interviewed her, Maya Dusenberry, and I highly recommend that book. I threw it twice. I'm so angry to tell the story.
So the two of you have gone 20 plus years with medical conditions. I have as well, but not to the extent that you have. And I think there's many of us out there that have suffered when we didn't need to suffer. I remember my early 20s before I had my first son. My menstrual cycle was so bad that from, the middle of the month until the end of the month, I was doubling over in pain. And I was sent to a gynecologist who said to me, well, I know exactly what we're going to do. And I said, great. I was excited. We're going to cauterize all the nerves in your uterus. And I said, so what happens if I ever want to get pregnant? Well, number one, you're probably not going to have any feeling getting pregnant. And number two, you'll never know when you're going into labor. So it would have to be a C-section. And I thought about it, and I thought, I'm not giving up this pain for that. It did not sound right to me.
Sure.
And I soon learned that this doctor was doing this on many patients and causing them irreparable harm. So something in my mind said, hey, you got to find another way. And I did. It wasn't easy. But again, I wasn't bedridden. There were days I felt like I should have been, but I wasn't. So what do we do to change this image that doctors see of women? And you say it's both male and female doctors. Is there anything we can do?
Go ahead, Cynthia.
I think that we should, we need to teach pain, and we need to teach bias in medical schools. And that's something we're working really hard on at For Grace, and it's really hard to do. Basically, the pharmaceuticals own the medical schools. I have a lot of background with pharmaceuticals, and I just watched, you got to watch Dope Sick about Purdue Pharma, because they tried to pull me in as their number one patient spokesperson, and it's spot on. So if we could get it, if we can get this taught in medical schools, that's so important. And also we need to keep talking about this. We need to educate our doctors. We need to walk away from doctors that abuse us. We need to know that we're telling the truth, and we want to be well. And we're, as Darci was saying, we don't want to be sick. We're not doing this for attention. Or I was often told that you're doing this because you love the attention you're getting from your attentive partner or something. It's like, that's crazy. I thought I looked better in my in my tutu than my wheelchair. It's just like, you gotta, honestly, you gotta keep educating the doctors. I mean, one doctor was abusing me actually about a year and a half ago, and I held up the book that said doing harm, and he stopped abusing me. You know, it's like, I wouldn't talk to him. I just thought, this is so abusive. I'm going back to those old days. So I think even confronting doctors is a good thing to do. And advocating comes at a huge price. You know, a lot of doctors don't like you if you advocate. Going through cancer care, I mean, you're supposed to, oh my God, the big C, you know, the threat is death. And it's a fear-based mentality of medicine. And let's face it, medicine is about money. And they wanted me to do all of their treatments. And I was saying, no, I'm going to do it integratively. I have something called CRPS, and they never took that seriously, but I kept educating. And, you know, I just think, I still think advocating, even though I paid such a high price for advocating, especially for cancer care, but now I'm doing great. I think that it's still worth advocating and always being responsible for our own wellness. And women get mad when they hear that. Like, I got mad when I first heard that. I thought, wait, I never wanted to get sick. Why am I responsible? The doctor's supposed to fix me. But it's like Darci learning all about nutrition. That's what's important. We need to learn what's best for our bodies. And we need to say yes or no and really make that decision whenever a doctor wants to do something. We have the final say. And I think that women don't realize that we have the power. We go home and we live with whatever we say yes to. So if we're just like, whatever you want, we're going to go home and we're going to live with it. And the doctor goes home and frankly forgets about you. So that's a couple of ideas.
Yeah. And I think there is a built-in hierarchy when you go to a doctor. They assume the higher position. And we need to equalize that by being a great patient. And what it means to be a great patient is you're prepared. Write down questions. Ask the questions so that you understand, so you're not just taking what they say as God truth. They're not God. Only God is God. And so we have to have the questions, and we need to do the research before we go on a medication. We have to be actively involved, and we need to tell these people, you need to come down to my level and empathize with me here. And I think it also helps to have at least a three-pronged approach where there's someone else involved, another physician, someone who we found that does believe us, and work with that physician or that mental health professional that's saying, listen, I have been working with Darci, this is what's going on, and get that other person involved in a conversation so that you're not by yourself. I've been bringing Mark with me. Obviously, he has to bring me because I'm in a wheelchair as well. When a doctor looks at Mark instead of me, he's like, she's fully responsible for her health. She's fully capable of answering any questions you have. He never lets a doctor look at him or refer to him, and they do. And I've learned this by when Mark's come with me. I didn't realize it until he started coming with me, that they look at him and I'm like, excuse me, I'm the one asking the questions. I'm the one that gets the answer. And so I think we have to not be afraid to ask the questions and to demand what we need. And there is no hierarchy. We should be on an equal plane. I'm the one going through the symptoms. And if you're a doctor and you've never suffered as severely as I have, how can you understand? Maybe you can learn something here. It's a learning. We have to learn from each other, and we have to be empathetic towards each other because they went to medical school for some reason, maybe money, maybe empathy. But, we need to ask them, can you come down to an empathetic level here with me so we can have a conversation.
I love that. I just, the only thing I would say, maybe not even disagree with, but you're not, if you're coming to empathy, you're not coming down, you're actually moving up, right? I mean, you need to come up to this level of empathy and care.
True that.
And first do no harm, right?
Yes.
You know, you have to kind of remind them every now and then. I just actually just finally left the medical profession because they were making me so sick. And that's when I actually went into a CRPS remission, a partial remission. And I started swimming. I was mentioning before we started talking here, but I started swimming a mile. You know, I hadn't done aerobic exercise for 19 years. I couldn't. And when I left that abusive system that was making me so freaking ill, in my nice language, suddenly I could swim. Suddenly I'm a singer. I could sing. I was recording again. I got my voice back. I couldn't speak for 5 years. And I just got so much more well. And then going to integrative medicine, switching to doctors who really do, they've come up to empathy. You know, they literally, they really care and they really get it. And yeah, so important. We need to be partners. If we're going to have doctors as part of our, I like to call us wellness seekers rather than patients. I feel like patients somehow is like that gown with, you know, showing our backside or something. You know, but I don't know. If we're going to have a doctor be a part of our wellness, we need to be partners. And as soon as, if they're not willing to be partners, then we move on. We could fire them and remember that they work for us and move on. And many doctors want to be partners, you know, and like you were saying, Darci, they want to learn from us and we can learn from them. And that's the best relationship there is, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And talking about partners, we have Mark with Darci, yep, and John with Cynthia. And I've met both of these terrific partners. And you hear so many times that when a spouse gets ill and it's long-term, the relationship just deteriorates. And one of the things that I think spoke volumes in both of those podcasts is having your partners there saying that, yeah, it's not what they bargained for. They saw life differently, just like the two of you had. But you know what? It's their love for you that has kept them there. And, you know, I look at my own husband and sometimes I think, boy, I really put you through the ringer. You know, suffering with migraines for our whole married life, going on our honeymoon and lying in a bed with towel over my head. I mean, great way to start a marriage, right? But
actually, in a way, yes.
Yeah.
Put it to the test, right?
But he's always there for me. And I saw that with Mark and I saw that with John. In your experience, when you've talked to other women or even been around your doctors, do your doctors and these other people, do they really see the quality in your caregivers?
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. You know, Mark and I just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary last week.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And, you know, I found it interesting. People came up to us and we went into a bookstore and this woman was just watching us and she had this smile on her face, and then she walked by us and she turned around and looked at us and I'm like, hello, you have a beautiful smile. And I said, can we help you with something? And she said, oh, no, I was just watching you, you know, be sweet together. And then there were 2 other couples that did similar things. And it's because of Mark. It's not because of me. Yeah, I mean, our situation is different. There aren't a lot of women in wheelchairs with men pushing them around. But I think it was our interaction that it was still loving. It wasn't like this begrudging man pushing this wheelchair. You know, we were interacting even though he's looking at the top of my head. Like, you know, you have to be creative and, you know, looking at each other. But I think people do notice, and I really noticed it last week.
That is wonderful. And Cynthia,
Yeah,
I've
go
seen
ahead. I'm sorry.
I've seen you and John on Facebook and with your friends, and it just seems so warm and natural.
Yeah, and people look at us the same way, I think, Darci. There's something about I don't know, it's such an extraordinary love, I think, when one person's disabled, and especially, I don't know, there's something about the woman in the wheelchair and the guy, I always say pushing me around, you know. But
Yeah.
I mean, people, I really catch them looking at us and really deep, genuine smiles. And
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, I used to think, oh, maybe there's a pity thing, you know, we're used to the pity looks, but it's like, it's not, it's more like they I don't want to say admire, respect a real love, a love that's that deep. And I see that a lot. And it just kind of tickles me. I think that these men sort of they adore us. You know, they
do.
cherish us, and
Yes.
women want that. It's like a Hallmark movie. And,
Yeah.
you know, people have been watching Hallmark a lot over Christmas, but it kind of, I was just thinking that when you were talking, Darci, it's like a Hallmark movie. It's kind of too good to be true, but it is true. And John and I actually were not allowed to get married. I would have lost my I would have lost my health insurance, and if I ever got catastrophically ill, like with cancer, I would have died. So people always say, I mean, you guys are more married than any, and it's just kind of funny because we've been together over 41 years, but we weren't allowed. And yet John always says, you know, I would never have left. I made vows, and yet we weren't even allowed. We weren't even allowed to make them. Isn't that interesting? So it doesn't really matter how how we get together, or how, I don't know if what the legalities are. It's all about the love and the loyalty, and it's amazing. I'm very, very, very blessed. I don't think, you know, you were saying earlier, Karen, you know, how can you smile? Well, that's how I smile, you know.
Right, exactly.
And also, I was going to say that there's something Darci said, but like when people, if I'm doing an interview, say with some TV station or something, they'll say, you're such a hero or something. I'm in the wheelchair. I'm like, the hero is 10 steps behind. You know, that's, the hero could have left at any time. I didn't have a choice. Yeah.
Right. That's so true. I mean, it's, and people don't see that. And so let's say it together. The hero is the caregiver.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they're choosing.
Yeah.
And remember with CRPS, symptoms are suicide and loss of spouse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, that's expected. So let's be better than expected. You know, I mean, it's not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't good enough side effects. So we're changing that, Darci.
Amen.
What I don't like to hear is that our government put a restriction on you that you couldn't get married. I mean, obviously you have a marriage like no other, okay? It just has not been granted in front of the government. I'm sure God has put his rubber stamp on that because you two are together. But how dare us say, you know, that we're going to take your health care away? We all need health care, and it should have nothing to do with whether we're married or not. And, you know, I will advocate for that 100,000 times over, because you have the best caregiver. I mean, like you said, there was not even a piece of paper that said, you promised her, so you have to stay there. It's in his heart.
And I'm, you know, people always ask, did you think he was going to leave? Weren't you afraid? Never, not for a moment. I knew. And we got together when we were 19. We had about a year and a half of wellness. And then at 21, everything went to hell. And I never for a moment ever doubted his love for me or that he would leave. We actually try to we make that up for documentaries, but he never actually considered leaving, because people want that, but it just never happened.
Well,
amazing.
And I'm sure, like you said, there were times that you thought of suicide. I'm sure there were times that he thought, yeah, you know what? She's sleeping. I could walk out the door, never come back. That's not for me. Yeah.
I don't know that he ever thought that, but he thought about suicide like I did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been such a hard life, but looking back and doing the whole trauma piece, it's almost like the suicide was a way to avoid annihilation. The thinking about it, it was a coping mechanism, because there was no way out. And for so long I was getting sicker and sicker and being bedridden for so long, and thinking, really that I'm never going to get out. I mean, I'm never going to get out of this, and we're never going to be out of this hell. And then you start going after each other because everybody else is left. And, but in a way, when I look back, I think that was a coping mechanism to survive, a really important coping mechanism, because that was the way out. You have to have some control. And we had really lost all of that. So we kind of lost our way. And, but here we are, yeah.
So you both have developed something on the side that deals with your illness that helps individuals. So Darci, I know you and your husband are very active in the church. So what is it that the two of you do to help support other people?
Well, I recently wrote a book called Beauty Beyond the Thorns. Subtitle is Discovering Gifts in Suffering. We are gifted with various things, the gift of direction, the gift of hope, the gift of courage when we suffer. I think we kind of live on a higher plane in a way where we can look down and we can see, deeper compassion than we would have had we not gone through what we're going through. And so I think it is a blessing to have what I have. And not that I don't want to walk again, but I don't want to miss the experiences of where I'm at right now. I don't want to miss what I'm being shown. And so I have a desire to share that with other people who are hurting, who are suffering. And people who haven't experienced that maybe can have a deeper understanding of what it's like. And so, maybe you should be a little more grateful, because I would be grateful to pick up the dog do. And so, that to me would be a gift. If I could walk around the backyard and pick up the dog do, it would be a blessing. And so we have things like this, where we can speak to other people, and everybody suffers. And so we're just at different levels, and no one's better than another because they've suffered more, or I'm not saying that. But I am saying that we can learn from each other. And I've just recently started this women's group called Reflections Women's Group. And it's just a gathering of women, and you can be on Zoom. You can, join us by Zoom. You can join us in person. But I don't want to call it a Bible study, because it's more than that. And it's not just for Christians. It's for anybody. It's for any woman. It's who wants to join. And so we have a variety of people who are coming along and learning just to give. And especially during this time, people have lost relationships during COVID. There are a lot of lonely people. And these two women who I was talking about that we met in Colorado Springs, they're going to be a part of it, So it's kind of cool, because God kind of drew them in. So he invited them, but I'm just the connector. I'm the vessel to connect these lonely women together, because we can all meet each other's needs. Absolutely. And so that's my role. My role's the vessel.
And Cynthia, you have a foundation.
Yes, a nonprofit. The foundations have all the money and they give it away. So yeah, when I realized that I really couldn't act, although I am acting again, but when I thought I couldn't, I don't know, I just had a new, I came to a point in my life about 21 years ago where I knew I wanted to help other women in pain, and I could imagine them, you know, literally like suicidal and being told they were crazy and being in a dark room by themselves. And, you know, I actually I met two people who had CRPS. Back then it was known as RSD. And we were going to be the Charlie's Angels. We were going to start a nonprofit together. And one of them committed suicide. And then the other one tried to commit suicide. And I thought, okay, so I need to do this. And it just became such an overwhelming passion for me. And I love for Grace. And we're going to celebrate our 20th anniversary, I'm realizing, in April.
Wow.
And it's so much work. It's way too much work, but it's really good. It's just there's nothing more rewarding, I don't think, than helping other people who are, to use your word, Darci, who are suffering horribly, and to let them know that they're not alone. Because so many of us, you know, with CRPS and other all different kinds of pain, we are alone. John and I have been isolated forever. You know, I mean, you just become isolated, especially if you're very young when this happens. And so we've done media all over the world, and we've done, like, we do lots of think tanks, lots of legislation, lots of writing support groups. It just kind of, I don't know, we do a lot of actually like music therapy, creative therapy, things like that we've been into now. Now we're moving toward trauma. Last year we did a lot about the pain cancer connection. So it's like whatever we get really passionate about, and I love the work. And I just got an email from somebody saying the book you wrote, the first memoir, she said that's how I healed, and I've never written to you. And so that it's so nice when somebody follows you and says that. I met a woman, I was in anthropology, and I was picking out a skirt, and I'm John, wheel me over to this woman. She was working there, and I need to meet this woman. And I just could tell she was a ballerina. And I asked her to help me find a top for this skirt. And she started telling me her story. And she's telling me, you know, I was 21, same year I was when I got sick. She said, I got an injury in my right leg, same age I was. It was called, you know, CRPS. You've never heard of it. She's telling me this whole story. And then she talked about For Grace. And I'm just, I mean, the reward.
Wow.
I can stand for a certain amount of time. I stood up, hugged her, and we couldn't stop crying. And like, it was a Kodak moment. I mean, that was, it was amazing. And for me, it was almost like looking like forward in time, you know, because she walked away from it. And then for her, it was like looking back in time, because I didn't walk away from it. And she had no idea who I was. And it was emotional. But there's no greater reward than helping people. I mean, I have such gratitude for being able to help people like that.
Well,
I think I'm like you, Darci, that I bring people together. I love to do that.
Awesome.
well, you two are amazing women. I wish we could have met under different circumstances, which would have been wonderful. But then maybe we wouldn't be as amazing as we are. So, but I'm so glad that you share your stories so our listeners can, you know, see the light at the end of the tunnel, because we know there are a lot of dark moments. But as I told somebody this morning, I do not like winter. But when I look out my window here in the studio and it's cloudy, I know that above the clouds, the sun is shining and it's going to peek through. And when it does, my pain will be less. So you know what? There's always something to look forward to. And talking to the two of you has been wonderful. I want to wish you a very happy holiday season, and give your caregivers a big hug from us, because they deserve it.
And we will enjoy it.
I'm sure you will.
Thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
Wonderful women.
Cynthia.
What a great conversation. I loved it. Happy holidays.
Happy
I
holidays,
did too.
everybody.
Happy
Take care now.
holidays.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.